Hello and welcome to Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. I'm Garth Neufeld along with Eric Landrum, your podcast hosts. As the name implies, we center on conversations about teaching, but we often veer into other interesting topics, which is the and stuff. This is episode number 126, where Eric had the opportunity to interview Maya Metser from New York University, NYU. Actually, recently graduated from NYU and currently somewhere in sunny San Diego. But before we get to that, the Psych Sessions podcast is brought to you by Hawks Learning. Are you looking for more affordable, quality materials for your intro psych students? Check out Hawks Learning's mastery-based courseware and texts. These materials introduce foundational psychology and research concepts that inspire students of all majors to think more critically about the world around them. Students and instructors benefit from built-in support features like error-specific feedback, explanatory videos, and detailed progress reports. Explore Hawks Learning's mastery-based intro psych materials, available to students for as low as $43, and free chapter projects and example videos exclusively for Psych Sessions listeners at www.hawkslearning.com/psych sessions. Again, that's www.hawkslearning.com/psych sessions. Did you know that Psych Sessions just passed 100,000 unique downloads? We want to thank you for your support. If you haven't yet had a chance to rate Psych Sessions on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, we invite you to leave a rating there, as this helps people to find us and helps Psych Sessions get out to more teachers of psychology. Also, feel free to use Psych Sessions in your course or with your graduate students. We have programming related to writing, career, professional development, and more. And more to come soon. And if you have an idea for Psych Sessions, please reach out to us. We're easy to find. Now, before you hear this interview with Maya Metser, please allow me to share some listening tips and some of my favorite moments. Maya Metser is a recent graduate of the Applied Psychology program at NYU and the host of the Psych Mike podcast, a podcast aimed at psychology majors and related to educating peers about careers in psychology. So make sure, if you have students who are trying to learn about what's out there and available for careers in psych, make sure that they are aware of this podcast. Please share it in your syllabus, in your conversations with students. Eric and I both had the opportunity to meet Maya through our good friend Stacy Spencer, who was a guest on Maya's podcast. And after that, Maya interviewed both Eric and me. And let me tell you, she is very good at what she does. Extremely thoughtful, reflective, hardworking. You ever meet those students and you just think, you are going to be fine. You're going places. And I can't wait to see what you do. Well, this is Maya. And she will not be a cog in the wheel. As you'll hear in this episode, she is an innovator and a leader. Maya and Eric begin by talking about her decision to be a psych major and the realization that NYU had two different psych programs. One applied, which is the one that she decided to pursue. And I wonder, as a first-generation college student in particular, myself, how much students really understand about two different psychology programs and the nature of them at 18 or 19 years old. If it was me, I would not have had a clue about it. And so I'm actually grateful for what Maya is bringing to her peers, because I think that she'll probably get into this. If a freshman is listening to Maya's podcast, they are going to get a lot of exposure to different pathways to these careers. Maya and Eric discuss graduating during the pandemic and how that actually led to Psych Mike. So there was an opportunity here, an idea, and she went out and grabbed it. What she did was she began to host conversations, Zoom conversations for her peers, for herself and her peers. And this eventually led to the podcast. So she lined up interviews with people that she was interested in learning more about. These are psychologists in the field doing psychology in different careers, and she wanted to interview them. And so she had the idea, and then she started to reach out to her peers and actually called them, I think all of them, and had conversations and said, hey, do you want to come and join this thing? And if so, what kind of questions do you have? What kind of career questions about psychology? And she held her inaugural successful event on Zoom during the pandemic, which led to other events. If I'm correct, I think there was 12 of them, which led to this great skill set and more open doors and ideas, and this became the Psych Mike podcast. By the way, as Eric was talking to Maya, I just realized that this is, to me, where Eric is at his best. He cares about students so much, and I really liked his critique because, Eric says it how he feels it. So he had a fair critique about the way that we treat students in higher education and psychology specifically. He talked about extinguishing the creative spirit from them. And Maya flies in the face of this. She's an innovator. She has learned something about the pursuit of creative ideas, and I like that. It's close to my heart. So anyway, the interview ends with a fascinating, relatable conversation about competency and feeling like an imposter. It's crazy to hear, somebody in their early 20s talk about this, and then some of our guests, many of us, you, me, in our 40s, 50s, 60s, who still feel imposterish. And yet she simultaneously has had this success, and she has learned these new skills and has competencies and understands that. And so it's always a balance, isn't it? I really enjoyed hearing that conversation in particular. Well, let's get to the episode. But before we do, Maya, thanks for pursuing us. It has been so nice to get to know you over this past year, and we wish you all the best in your next steps. And I'm going to say it here on behalf of this community of teachers of psychology. You have the support of this audience. We do love students, and we love to see students be successful and help out where we can. So please lean on us if you need anything at all as you continue on. All right, folks, here it is. Without further delay, Maya Metser with Eric Landrum.
I am so happy to be here for another episode of Psych Sessions. This is a special treat today. So welcome, Maya.
Thank you so much. And I can't believe I'm doing this. I spent my morning actually listening to a Psych Sessions episode. So it's weird to be the one being interviewed today, but it's an honor.
Well, it's very kind of you to say that. And so why I say special episode is because you're really the first, and I can't say undergraduate student anymore because you're a graduate, but you're the first newly minted graduate who has ever appeared on the podcast by yourself. We have had two undergraduates on before who came on with two other faculty members who talked about science communication, but I nor Garth have ever interviewed a student by themselves as the sole interviewee. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I mean, hopefully I'll come to understand more of why you want to interview me throughout this process, but I'm not used to being the person on the other side.
You want to just jump right in and forget the small talk? I mean, we can do that.
No, not at all. I like small talk.
You want the small talk?
No, I mean.
So how are you? How's the weather?
It's actually really nice here in Chicago.
Okay, so I got to tell you, first off, you started this. I've never been good at small talk. I mean, even when my mother was alive, and see, now you've brought up my dead mother. No, you didn't. That's about when my parents got really old, super old, that's about all I could talk to them about, because kind of in that memory loop, that's kind of where they kind of got stuck. So how's the lawn looking to my dad, and how's the weather to my mom? So I'll do small talk because I have to. What's that?
We don't have to bring that into here.
No, and like I said in an email to you, we can always edit out anything you want to. I think it's going to become obvious eventually why we're having a chat. And I promise I'm going to try not to have you, I'm not going to put you in the spot where I say things like, so speaking on behalf of all graduates who have survived the pandemic. So I'm not going to try to do that, because that's unfair. And one person doesn't typically get to be the representative of all members of any group. But I will be asking you to speak to your experiences. So
for sure.
So you just graduated within the past month, if I've got the timeline right,
last week,
NYU.
Yes.
And help me remember, and I'm sorry I don't know this, what borough is NYU located in?
It's in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, Greenwich Village.
And is that where you grew up? Is that kind of home for you?
Nope. I grew up in a suburb of Boston.
Okay. And wow. So you went to Manhattan, but you grew up in a suburb of Boston. Did you tell people that? Isn't there kind of a rivalry between Bostonians and New Yorkers?
There is, but thankfully I'm not a diehard sports fan, unless you talk to me about the Patriots and Tom Brady, and then I will, if you say anything bad about him, you will cross me and I will be angry. Okay,
very good. So how do you feel about the Buccaneer then?
You know what? I don't have opinions about the Buccaneers, but okay. I mean, it's awesome to see him play. It's sad to me that he's not on the Pats anymore, but I'm happy to just watch him throw the football. I don't really care what team he's on.
Yeah, it's kind of obviously not cause and effect, but you see how good they are, and then you see him depart 1 year later, what he does with his new team and how his old team does. I mean, it's a pretty stark contrast.
Yeah.
You don't, I mean, I'm not linguistically gifted, but I don't hear any Boston accent like you would hear in the movies.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. Like, I got that so much in college. Like, you're from Boston, but you don't have an accent. But does everyone think that everyone in Boston has accents? In my experience, most people didn't.
I think there's a stereotypical accent. I think Good Will Hunting is the movie I think of. The Southie. A lot of great schools in the Boston area. My goodness. Mm-hmm. Can I ask what drew you to NYU?
Well, okay, so there's the story that I tell myself, and then there's the formal story.
Okay, whichever one that you feel like sharing with our audience is fine.
Yeah, no. So as I told you, I'm an open book. So NYU has always been on my radar since I was a kid. I think it just suits who I am, the culture of the school, where the school is. I'm a city girl, so that's cliche, but that's essentially what it is.
Not if you grew up around Boston, I don't think that's cliche.
Yeah, but Manhattan's very different. And I knew that I wanted to go to a good school. I had an incredible time at NYU, and it was the right school for me. But I remember at the end of it, it was between University of Miami and NYU. And I just decided number one, I didn't want to be that far away from home. I really liked the idea of being able to just hop on a bus and be in Boston within 3 or 4 hours. And I wanted the city feel, frankly. I really did want that. So NYU it really is special that we have a campus kind of, but not really. So it was nice to be able to walk through the city to class and just have all the food I could ever want, to have access to really any type of person that I could possibly want to interact with. They were there at my fingertips. And that was really special.
Right. And there's a couple things there. So first off, there are things about New York City that you won't find in many other places. Although I suspect there might be a downtown campus in San Francisco where you might have found a similar thing. Maybe even there might be a downtown campus in Chicago that you might find similar. But in hindsight, which you didn't know at the time, probably being so close to home with a pandemic hitting was probably an amazing blessing for you. With the pivot, you probably did go home.
Oh, yeah.
So going home on a 4-hour bus ride was probably easier than going home, let's say, from San Francisco or Chicago or from Miami.
Yes. And I felt so grateful that week that everything started to escalate. I remember just having a conversation with my friends and my boyfriend and being like, should we? I felt like the city was going to shut down. I remember thinking that the city was going to shut down, and we had started making plans to we didn't really feel comfortable taking a bus either. So we try to pool our money together and get a rental car and try to drive up to Boston. And really within a couple of days we were gone. And that was really thankful that I lived so close and I didn't have to hop on a plane during that time.
Yeah, I remember students here at Boise State worrying about finding a rental unit. Finding a storage unit for they were trying to leave on the pivot on March 13th, and all of a sudden by March 16th, we're saying we're going completely online. And we kept some dorms open and available for people who couldn't leave instantly, or international students who actually couldn't fly out of the country. But storage units they just got sucked up instantly, and it was a mad dash for those.
Yeah. It was not. There's lots of emergencies today here in Evanston. Yeah, that was not a fun time. It was. I feel like I'll always look back at that spring 2020. There will be some nostalgia around it because it was. I don't know what it is. It's like this weird feeling of nostalgia when I look back at that time, even though it was a really anxious and not fun time, but one that I'll never forget. So when you went to NYU, did you go as a psychology major? Yeah, I think I actually applied to the psychology program, like the regular psychology program. We have two, and they accepted me to the applied psychology program because I guess what I wrote in my personal statement and all the rest of it was much more in line with what I would get being an applied psychology major. So I went in knowing that, yeah. So I don't know much about that department, but by the way, I've been on their campus, the NYU campus, but it was when I was 22 years old, and I was on a road trip with 3 of my fraternity buddies during our senior year of college, and we went on a road trip. I was in a fraternity, Zeta Beta Tau, and we went from ZBT house to ZBT house, from the Midwest to the East Coast and back. And I spent a couple nights maybe, on the NYU campus in that ZBT house at NYU. And it was amazing because it was New York City. So, yes. It was awesome. Anyway, so but there's not 2 departments, but there's just 2 degree programs. It's definitely different departments. So psychology is part of the College of Arts and Sciences, and then applied psychology is part of the Steinhardt School of Culture, Education, and Human Development. Oh, so there are 2 departments.
Yes. So if you so you wanted to be a psychology major, but they shifted your application without your permission?
Right. I actually didn't even know applied psychology existed. When I applied, I didn't know that was a thing. And when I received the admission letter with that I was admitted to applied psychology, I was like, what? That's not what I want. That's not what I applied to. But then I read about it and I was like, oh, that's actually really cool and very much what I want.
Was applied psychology there almost like akin to like an honors college or an honors program?
No, I wouldn't liken it to that. I think it's more the approach to the education and the experience is different. It's very much more focused around bridging theory, research, and practice. So, and I hope I'm not blundering here, but I think that the psych department is more so focused on the theory and the research. And we actually have a fieldwork component in our major, which was cool. We had to actually get some experience in the field as part of the major.
I mean, there are a handful of departments around the country that within the same department, they'll offer what I would call a regular bachelor's degree in psychology. And then they might call it an applied psych, bachelor's degree, or even sometimes they'll go as far as to say an undergraduate degree in IO Psych. Sometimes there's a handful of departments that do that, but it's really unusual that they are two separate departments, even in separate colleges.
Yes.
That have such similar names. That is very unusual. In fact, I've been doing this for 33 years, and that's the first time I've ever heard of that. Like that.
It's pretty cool. I didn't know it was rare, actually. It's the first time I'm hearing that. Seems normal to me.
Well, yeah, of course. And it is normal. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just really unusual and very unique. So, okay. So as you're reflecting back, you haven't had much space. There's not a lot of space in the rearview mirror, but there's a little bit. What was your commencement like? Was it virtual? Was it drive-through? What did you do for that?
I graduated in a hair salon.
Was it a really big hair salon?
I had a haircut scheduled before my graduation, before my commencement ceremony. And we had two. We had one school-wide one and one for Steinhardt. And the specific school one where they announce names and it's a little bit more, I don't know, more specific and personal. Yeah. So I had my hair appointment before that because I wanted to look nice before my commencement. And she arrived very late to my appointment. I told her that I had to be out of there by 11:30 and I was still in the chair at 11:55. So she grabbed my computer and I graduated from there, and I have pictures, and it'll be a great memory.
I think it'll be a great memory, and it'll make for a really good story. I mean, maybe that's kind of like for you, the classic, this is what I had to do for a pandemic graduation. You just had to pivot. I mean, literally you're probably in a chair that could pivot, right?
I was pivoting back and forth.
Yeah. You didn't want the reflection. You didn't want the reflection in the mirror, that effect. So you probably pivoted so the mirror wasn't reflecting back into your camera.
Right.
Literal and figurative pivot to graduate. Yeah, that's pretty good.
They told us that we'd have like a real ceremony in person at some point. I'm not so optimistic, but we'll see. Well,
it just won't be the same. I mean, I don't think there's any way to sugarcoat it. There are some things that you and your classmates are going to get ripped off. We did that at Boise State. So we just did a spring commencement about 3 weeks ago, and on Saturday. But on the Friday before that, we invited everybody back from the year 2020, spring 2020 and December of 2020. And we said, if you graduated, come on back. We'll have a ceremony just for you. You missed out. You got ripped off. And we'll do that. And we did it in our football stadium where we could have chairs spaced out 3 feet apart with masks. And I don't know what the count was, but out of spring and fall, out of 5,000 graduates, I'm going to say maybe 450 people showed up. So, and I actually went to that one, and I was happy to be there and happy to honor those folks. But out of 5,000 people, what is that? About 9% maybe showed up. So obviously it was meaningful to them, but
it's not the same, but
it's not the same. And there's no way we can make it the same, as much effort as we might put into it.
Yeah. So I the pandemic sucked. This year really did suck, but I don't know. I'm sad that I didn't get a normal graduation, but I'm also really grateful for this year because I feel like it gave me space to away from the normal routines of everything, kind of gave me the space to be able to take my blinders off and focus on what really mattered to me and who I am and what I actually love to do and what's important to me.
That is a really positive and healthy silver lining. So at NYU, did you start broadcasting the live event series even before the pandemic, or was the pandemic the trigger for that?
Pandemic was absolutely the trigger. So I started the event series in August. And then I was doing that live till December. And then I started the podcast in January.
So would you tell the audience who doesn't know that backstory about the live event series? And like, did you start that? Like, were you a member of Psychi? Did you start from there? Did the department chair ask you to do that? How did that all start?
Well, I am a member of Psychi, but it was totally independent. I had an idea and then I acted on it. So I will attribute a close friend of mine, Mitchell, who had started a similar thing, but more geared towards business people and sort of highlighting executives and things like that for students who were interested in those fields. And he started that a little earlier in the pandemic, around April. And I was inspired by that. And he has always been really supportive of me. And I think he noticed that I was really kind of sick of being just a good student and nothing else. Not that I was nothing else, but I was really, really focused on school my whole life. I was a straight A student my entire life. I am a perfectionist. I sought out lots of different academic extracurricular activities like research and all that different stuff, but I never really gave myself the space to be creative and to channel my kind of creative and leadership spirit that I think I've always had. And so he really did notice that, and he encouraged me to start something of my own. And I'm passionate about psychology, and I noticed the pain point that I had as a student of psychology. And that pain point was that I loved the field, and I remembered the reason that I entered the major, feeling like I don't know what I want to do with this yet, but it's versatile enough that I feel like it'll open doors for me, no matter what I end up doing or what I want to do when I'm 22. And I'm at the point right now, I'm 22 right now, and I still don't know what I want to do, but I'm so grateful for my psychology background. And still, like, I just felt like I didn't quite get what do I actually do with this question? I didn't quite get that answered. And it felt a lot of the time like me and my peers felt like if you study psychology, you either become a therapist or maybe you do research or you become an academic. And beyond that, we didn't have much of an understanding of what psychology was and what you could actually do with it. And part of that too is that I realized we didn't have much exposure to professionals in the field, people who were actually doing the stuff, getting their hands dirty, and who could speak to their experiences and offer their genuine advice for young people in a way that I know a lot of these speakers have told me, I wish I had this resource as a kid because I was lost. And there's something beautiful in being lost too. Like there's something beautiful in having to figure that out for yourself. But so one day I just sat down with my mentor, Natalie. I love her and I'm so grateful to her. So she was my mentor for my honors thesis this year. And I sat her down and I was like, hey, I have this idea. I want to put on an event series where every week I highlight someone in the field who can talk about their career path and their life and answer questions from students. Will you please be my first speaker? And she said, of course. And we scheduled a date, August 19th, and that was that. And so I spent the next 2 or 3 weeks just planning and getting the word out to as many psychology majors and non-majors too who were interested in psychology that I could, got as many signups as I could, and I started hosting these events.
And there it is. That's why you're a guest on this podcast. Right there, in a nutshell. There's so many things in what you just said, Maya, to unpack. Higher education tends to beat the creativity out of students. We do that. We take people who want to write and be creative and have creative thoughts, and we beat APA format in, and we take creativity out. And I say this as an author of at least 3 books about APA format, so I get it. I'm partly guilty here.
Yeah.
It's so amazing what you did in terms of leadership, because I'm going to say something that's going to sound a little bit odd, but let me explain it. I know you. And I don't really know you, but I know you. I know you, the straight A student. I could name 10 students off the top of my head right now who are Boise State students who you just described when you were talking about you. even though I've probably talked to you, cumulatively about 2 hours in our lives, I know you. Of course, I've been doing this 34 years. So, I mean, I've got that going. And you've done the Psych-Chi thing. You worked in the infant lab. Yeah, I did a little bit of research, right? You did the infant lab thing. I get that. But you looked for something and you were willing to invent it. And you went to your mentor and you interviewed her first. God, that's smart. That is so smart.
Who else would I interview?
You could have interviewed another professor who you'd had a couple classes from. You could have interviewed the Psych-Chi advisor. I mean, you got all kinds of candidates. I did not look at the NYU roster in applied psychology, but I'll bet there's a whole bunch of really good people there.
Oh yeah, and I've interviewed a few of them, and interviewing my mentor though was because I knew her too, and I knew her personally, and she
safe place to start, and she wasn't going to let you flub up, and she was rooting for your success before you even started the interview. You knew it was going to go well. Do you have an idea how many people attended that first Zoom?
95 people.
Oh my gosh.
95 on that first, and I maybe it was 90. Something like that. But I had about maybe a little bit under 200 people signed up, and I would say about half the people came.
That's really typical, about 50% no-show rate. And let's say, and you said you are a member of Psych-Chi?
I am. Actually, you know what? I lied. That's not true. At that point, I don't think I even had close to 200 signups. It was maybe more like 130. And the reason so many people came, though, it wasn't because I just sent out the invite. Eric, I reached out to every single person personally. Like I had them in the sign-up form. I had them give their name and their email and their phone number. I made that. Initially, that was optional, but then I made it a requirement because I reached out to them personally, and then I scheduled a one-on-one call with every single person to not just to explain what PsychMic was, but to really get a sense of what are they curious about? What are they confused about? What questions do they have? What are they interested in? What do they want to do when they leave college? And just to feel like I also was providing value, and I wasn't just asking based off of my curiosities and my lostness, I was staying grounded.
Your heart's in the game. We'll get to that, because on your website there's a phone number, and I got a feeling it's yours. Yeah. So there's no doubt about that. But I don't know the reason why they signed up, but I think the reason why they signed up is that you hit a nerve.
Yeah.
You're providing a service and an informational source that was sorely needed for those students. And it really doesn't matter how many signed up, but if you got 90 or 90 attendees, I'm thinking, do you remember before the pandemic when you went to Psych-Chi events on your campus, how many people typically on my campus, when we have a Psych-Chi event, we're lucky to get 10 people to show up.
I'd never been to an in-person Psych-Chi event because I had only joined right before the pandemic started. So I went to my initiation, and that was maybe 25 or 30 people. I'm
guessing 90 people at this event was an amazing turnout, especially in a pandemic.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was surreal. Like I was shaking the whole time. And I remember going up, I did it in my basement to have as much quiet as I could have. But I remember going upstairs, and I just I had no words. I went upstairs, and my parents were just in awe, and everybody was in awe. But I had friends calling me and being like, that was insane, because I didn't think I could pull something off like that, because I had set the date and I had no other plans. Like I didn't have anything else set up besides the date.
I'm going to push just a little bit here. You did, but you didn't. You say, I didn't think I could pull something off like that, but you scheduled it, and you got the technology ready, and you got your speaker ready. It sounds like you called each and every person. So I kind of think you did think you could pull it off. Now, maybe you told yourself, I don't think I can pull this off, as kind of a safety net in your brain in case it fails.
Defensive pessimism.
Yeah, I can say See, I told you I couldn't pull it off, and I only had 4 people show up. And then we would have said, here's what we would have said. Well, at least those 4 people got something really good out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever shows up, it would have been a success no matter what. That's what we would have said.
Yeah. And you know what? I think by the time I had decided that I wanted to do this, I think I knew I could pull it off. But like old Maya, I don't think would imagine that I could do what I've done this year.
Okay. Very cool. So let's talk about old Maya versus new Maya. I would like to, have I met new Maya? Hi, new Maya.
Yeah, this is new Maya.
So what does new Maya think she can do? And what does new Maya think her limitations are?
So what do I think I can do? I think I can do anything. I mean, yeah, I think I can do anything. I think if I want it badly enough, I can do it. I tend to, I don't know, maybe this is too much of a tangent, but I think I tend to get really riveted by things and then put my heart and soul into them. And then after a few months, I'm like, I don't really want to do that anymore. So if I think it'll have to be something that I know that I can do forever, but I think I can really do anything I set my mind to. I have limitations, and a lot of those are internal, and I still have self-doubt. I still have issues getting myself motivated in the morning sometimes, and I still feel like an imposter a lot of times. But I know deep down that I have what it takes to do whatever I want to do with my life.
A lot of contradictions in that. Well, and let me be fair. I think if you were to talk to academics and clinicians and counselors, and quite honestly, in those moments of boredom, if you were to listen to psych sessions interviews, you'll hear a lot of faculty members talk about their imposter phenomenon. It's a really common theme for male faculty members and for female faculty members. So in some ways, that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
I think it shifts over time. I think I probably don't have imposter phenomenon when I walk into the classroom anymore, but I might have imposter phenomenon when I started to become a podcaster, because I was starting something new with a new skill set. I think if you're 22 and you're starting out in a new career path, you might feel some imposter phenomenon about a lot of things, but as you gain experience and talent and skill and confidence, that list of imposter phenomenon things will get shorter and shorter and shorter. Mm-hmm. And eventually there'll be hardly anything.
Mm-hmm. And that's, I think it's come up in probably every single interview that I've conducted this year with some 30-some professionals that I've interviewed, and that comes up all the time. And that is something that has been so validating to the members of my audience and to me, to hear somebody who's accomplished so much in their life still say, I doubt myself sometimes, and I don't always know what I'm doing. And I sometimes feel like I don't belong in space. To hear that, in some ways, it's like, oh, well, will this feeling never go away then? Like, is there no hope? But at the same time, it's like really comforting to know that there's a healthy dose of it, I think, where it sometimes can keep you in check. But as long as at the end of the day, you can remember what your strengths are and what you're good at and who you are and what matters to you, and do that values check. I just had a conversation about this with one of my speakers who's incredible, but taught me about this values check thing that I think we all intrinsically do sometimes. Like, does this matter to me? And if it matters to me, it doesn't really matter what the outcome is or what my failures feel like. If it matters and it's in line with who I am and what impact I want to make, it shouldn't really matter.
Yeah, I think at some point we might be conflating imposter phenomenon with just making mistakes. I mean, we're not going to know the outcome of things. I mean, if we always knew the outcome of things, we would never make a mistake, right? I mean, we would always know how to act and what choice to make. but we're gonna make mistakes no matter what age, no matter what situation. Sometimes we just mess up. And something I've really gotten good at, I don't mean to brag, but I've gotten really good at apologizing. I've gotten really good at saying, I'm sorry, I apologize, I messed up, and I'll just try to make it better as quick as I can. And I say that more now than I probably did 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I guarantee I was cockier and less nice. Let's put it that way. Less nice and cockier, and probably, I guarantee I apologize less. So I think that's just the case, at least for me.
There's something kind of comforting about apologizing too, I feel. I also didn't used to apologize. I think I'm starting to learn it just a little bit, but I've got a ways to go. But I think there's something really comforting about saying I messed up and I'm sorry, and asking if there's anything that you can do to amend the situation, or really, and not even. Sometimes it's just, I'm sorry, I messed up. I'll do better next time. And there's something really great about that.
There's also another theme and something that you mentioned, and we can go on to another topic really soon, but it's a theme that I think it affects everybody, but I think it's affecting college students in your era right now, particularly. And I think we talked about it when you interviewed me on your podcast, which was delightful. Thank you for having me as a guest, which is I think today's era of college students, college graduates, put a lot of pressure on themselves to make the perfect career decision immediately at graduation. And they are, I don't want to say scared or frightened, but they're putting this epic amount of pressure on themselves that my first job has to be the best job, the right job. I don't want to make a mistake. I've just survived a pandemic. I've just got my degree. I've spent all this money, all this federal financial aid, and it better be right. And the analogy I use, and I think it applies to a lot of people, is that we want to peek at the end of the book. We want to see how it turns out. We want to marry the right person. We want to be in a relationship with the best significant other. We say things like best and right, but we never know. We don't get to peek at the end of the book. We don't. I got married once before, then I got a divorce, and I got married again. And without going too deep into it, you love your boyfriend, I'm imagining, and you followed. You ended up. I take that back. You didn't follow him. You ended up going to the same school, and that turned out to be great. And you've been together for a while, and you'll probably be together for a long while. But you don't know if you're going to be with him forever. Nope. I hope if that's what you want, that's what happens, right? And the first job that you get, the first full-time gig, odds are will not be the same employer for the next 40 years. That's what the national data tell us. Yeah. But that pressure is, I don't want to marry the wrong person, or I don't want to take this job because of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. What if I get a job offer 6 months from now? Should I take this one? Is it going to look bad if I quit and take the next one that comes along? I think students these days, and other people in general, do this to themselves.
They do. And I've been really thinking about what changed about our culture that makes this such a common, phenomenon.
Good for you.
And I really don't know. I don't have the answers, but I can attest to that almost every conversation I had with the members who signed up for Psych Mike, the questions that they posed came from that exact place. It was, I think I wrote one down that I thought was, one girl said, I'm constantly trying to validate myself and I feel bad for taking one day off. That's a little different than what we were talking about, but
it's related.
And this feeling of, I had so many people pose this question almost in these exact words. How do I figure out what the best move is for me right after undergrad? How do I figure out what that should be? and with that word should, what it should be. And I think I had that same mindset, and it's slowly evolving. And I still have this idealism that I carry with me, and that I don't have a job right now. I don't. And I'm kind of looking, but I'm kind of giving myself some time. And I definitely still want to find a job that is fulfilling to me and that I love to do, and but I know that realistically, that probably won't be my first job, and that's okay. And I'll learn from it either way. But this question of how do I get a job that I really like, and how do I avoid doing all the things that I don't like? And how do I got that question so much. How do I avoid being like an unpaid intern or being paid very little and doing things that I don't want to do, like grunt work at an entry-level position? That's a fear that a lot of students have.
Oh my gosh, there's so much goodness in what you just said. So you talked about, the phrase was at the very beginning of that, what's the best job that I should get? I forget the exact.
That I should, what's the best job that I should get after college?
And you keyed in on the word should. I would key in on the word best. I think they're both problematic, because I think when any of us, what's the best car I should buy? I handicap myself in thinking there is a best, because there's too many variables in that decision. And so, because in that area, it's called buyer's remorse. You buy a car, you drive it home, all of a sudden, within 24 hours, you're thinking, I just made a $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 decision. Did I make the right one? Oh my gosh, I'm going to take it back, kind of thing. So when we lock ourselves into best or should, it's kind of like, oh, we're never going to know. That's what I say colloquially. We don't ever get to peek at the end of the book ahead of time to see how it turns out. But then you very brilliantly kept going and started talking about, well, I don't want to get the job where I do something and I don't like it. And see, that's the thing. You're not going to know if you like it till you get the job, right? And you can get a job where the tasks are crappy, but you end up loving your colleagues around you. And it actually turns out to be a good job. Or you can get a job where your colleagues are crappy, but you're making $120,000 a year and you're miserable. And $120,000 a year in Boise, Idaho, you're living high on the hog. $120,000 a year in downtown Boston, you might be barely scraping by. Yeah. Quite honestly.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. And sometimes I don't ever get to tell college graduates this or college students this. And I don't know if very many of students or new graduates listen to this podcast. So it might be safe to say this. I don't know. But sometimes you just got to jump in there and do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might have to take the unpaid internship just to get that third letter of recommendation or that third reference for the next thing you're going to do. Or you might have to take the $15 an hour job and live at home with mom and dad for another year and just bank some money until you can launch with roommates into an apartment or something like that. Because Maya, you got me thinking, you've been thinking about what changed, what made it like this. And my best hypothesis, and I haven't thought deeply about this, is economy. I think 40, 50, 60 years ago, someone with a high school diploma could have gone out and gotten a job that could have supported a family and could have paid a mortgage. But even a Boise State graduate wanting to live in Boise, Idaho, cannot get a job. Most graduates. Now, engineering graduates are different. Accounting graduates are different. But the run-of-the-mill graduate cannot go out and get a job and sustain and have a family, even on a college degree, much less 60 years ago on a high school degree. I think that's what's made it different. One possible explanation, at least.
I think you're totally right. I think you're right on the money. Like,
I don't know, but
I think it's only going to get worse with time. Like, I really think as our technology becomes more advanced and we have more robots doing the jobs that the majority of the population is doing, we eliminate the need for a lot of jobs. Yeah.
Well, I think that's why one of the things why I'm just so impressed with what you did, though. Your story is so impressive and so inspirational. Even though I can see on your face you're not very happy at the moment because we've talked about all these difficult things, but you found a problem that not only you were struggling with, but you knew your classmates were struggling with, and you invented a solution, an informational solution that you decided, I'm going to solve this. I'm going to give away the solution for free.
Yeah.
Do you actually ever pause and stop and think about how awesome that is?
Sometimes. I think it usually takes somebody telling me that it's awesome for me to think about it. I think that I know that it's awesome, again, because I don't think that I believed in myself enough a few years to do something like this. And so I know that it does take a lot of like self-belief and I wasn't really taking I guess I was taking risks. What were the risks? I don't know. Now thinking back, like, I don't think there were.
Should we go over these together? What were the risks?
Yeah, let's go over it. What were the risks?
What were the risks? Let's see. You took time away from something to contact people, to ask them, to interview them, to record them, to edit them, to write liner notes. You created a website or you bought a website. You created a logo or bought a logo. You registered your podcast with iTunes and also all the other Google Podcasts and Stitcher and all the other places. I know this because it's all on your website. You contact people before each episode and give them a chance to ask questions ahead of time. You edit snippets of each episode and publicize them at the beginning of each episode so that people know what's coming. You have a newsletter that people can subscribe to. You're laughing because, haha, I know all this. So you weren't doing that before August of 2020, were you?
No.
So you started doing all of that, which meant you stopped doing some other things because time is finite.
Yeah. Well, I also don't think I could have done what I did if I was part-time for my whole last year of college. I didn't take as many courses as I normally do, but I also did an honors thesis. So that was time. But yeah, I don't know if I see it as I guess the only risk, it was time, but at this point, I don't see it as, I think back then when I started it was kind of scary and it felt risky, but I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but basically this is maybe a message for my future self if I ever come back and listen to this awesome archive of myself speaking at age 22. Hello, future Maya, if you are. Like, just do it. Like, it's so cliche, but like, I don't know what I would have missed so much more by not just doing something that I had a quick fleeting idea to do. And it's really not in my nature I think I'm less of an action-oriented person than I might seem. I think I really overthink and I really am an indecisive person. You can ask every single person in my life. I am horrible when it comes to decisions, like really, really, really horrible. So I think it was a big step for me to decide something and within a week, like have it all set up. But I will carry that into my life forever, like knowing that I can do that and it's definitely worthwhile. And even if I fail, quote unquote, like it will have been worth it.
What do you mean fail? You're doing it. At some point you might stop, but if you stop, that doesn't mean fail.
No, I don't think, and I also don't really, I was thinking about this earlier. I believe in introspection and reflection, but I don't really believe in regret. Like, I don't really believe that we should look back and regret things and wish that we had done them differently, even though I definitely feel regret sometimes. I'm human, but I like to remind myself that I always learn something. I always meet someone. There's always something to be gained from an experience, even if that's a negative experience. So yeah, even if I put on an event and 4 people came and nobody ever came to the future ones, I think it still would have been a positive experience.
Absolutely, because sometimes the learning happens in the planning and the preparation, and it can actually be more nerve-wracking sometimes to present something in front of 4 people more than 40 or 400, to be honest with you. So what would be I'm not going to say best, I'm not going to say should, but if you were designing kind of the optimum, do you have like future, if you were putting location coordinates in your GPS and you had multiple options, for Maya's future, what are some possible routes that you've thought about that I like that route? Oh, I like that route. Do you have are you willing to share those, or you want to keep them private?
Of course. No, I don't want to keep them private. I just don't know that I really have anything concrete in my head. Okay. I do know I do know the type of stuff I want to be doing. I just don't know where to channel that yet. So I know that I want to build things because I love doing that. And I learned that this year. I want to be working with people in as many disciplines as I possibly can. I want to always learn from people with different backgrounds than me. So if I could build something where people with different minds could come together and build something really cool, that would be cool. When you say build,
you mean create? You don't mean create. You don't necessarily mean literally.
No, not with my hands.
Physically. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
No, yeah, create something that is impactful and valuable for a lot of people. So that's really vague, but I don't really know yet. There's things that I'm passionate about education reform. I'm also passionate about juvenile justice reform. I've worked a little bit around that space in college. There's a lot. I'm passionate about health. There's a lot of things I'm passionate about. I just don't know where to channel them yet.
Is there anything, when I talk to students about internships, for example, I talk about what you can try to get out of them, but I also will give this spiel to students about sometimes on an internship, you learn what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And I tell them that can be extremely valuable, because sometimes students come away and go, I had a lousy internship. And I say, I'm really sorry, but that can be really valuable to know what you don't want to do. Do you have ideas about what you don't want to do?
I don't want to do research. I do not want to do research. And maybe that'll change. I don't want to make rules for myself, but I just don't really see myself being in an academic institution and doing research. I don't know. I feel like I would feel constrained. I don't know. I feel like I would feel constrained.
I mean, research in the kind of like a traditional lab setting type thing where you're collecting data or designing surveys, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think I had to have that experience to know that it wasn't what I wanted to do long term. I still really do appreciate it. And I will always appreciate the data skills that I have and the critical thinking skills that I have as a result of my research experiences. I just don't think that I will be a leader of my own lab one day.
Okay. No, that's fine.
But I do see myself teaching one day. And that's part of the reason why I love this podcast.
Yeah. The creativity and giving others the venue to be creative. You should continue your conversation with Garth because he really feels in some ways exactly the same way. And he actually initiated something at a teaching conference a couple of years ago called the Teaching of Psychology Incubator, where he put together a pre-conference workshop for teachers of psychology to come together who had ideas about something that they might want to launch. And he put them together with a couple other faculty members for like a 4 or 6 hour pre-conference workshop to help them incubate. Okay, you got an idea for a podcast, you got an idea for a blog, you've got an idea for a conference you want to host on your campus. Here are some knowledgeable people who will help you brainstorm how to do it, how to raise money for it, how to get publicity for it.
I love that.
Helping them incubate their own ideas and advance their own notions. He thinks that way. He loves that. That's where he lives.
I will definitely reach out to him again about that.
That's where his energies are. I think the two of you could meet in those GPS coordinates quite nicely. Yeah, absolutely.
I can see it. Yeah.
So Was it that you just didn't find that at NYU, so you invented Psych Mike, or you found it at NYU and then you also created Psych Mike?
I haven't seen anything like Psych Mike at my university.
Okay.
There's resources, but when there's clubs that hold talks, but none that are devoted specifically to career development of students and young professionals.
Is there anything that you thought, oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk about this, and I have forgotten to mention it? Is there anything on your punch list?
I don't know. I don't think so. Think so. No.
Are you going to give yourself some space this summer to kind of relax and recharge and kind of reflect on, I just survived a pandemic graduation, a pandemic 16 months, and give yourself a chance to kind of recoup?
Yes, that's the plan. I'm moving to San Diego now just to be there for the summer. We'll see how long that lasts, but I'll be with some friends and hopefully making some cool connections and just exploring what it is I want to do and giving myself that space.
So away from the Boston summer to the San Diego summer.
It is superior. The Boston summer is not the best. It's super humid, super humid and hot. But I don't have a problem with heat. But yeah, I just want to be in San Diego with my friends and kind of give myself that space. Okay.
And so now I'm going to venture a little bit into the none of my business department. Will the boyfriend also be in San Diego?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you won't be a whole summer away from him. So.
Even if I was, that would be okay.
Yeah, of course. People are away from their loved ones all the time, but still long distance relationships are difficult. And we're still coming out of this pandemic. And I'm a big fan of all the comfort we can have right now, in whatever form people get it. People should have that. So you keep expecting me to tease you, and I'm not going to tease you. That's not my plan. I whatever makes people happy and comfortable in the pandemic, that's what they should have.
Yeah. Yeah. We've done long distance before, and it has been successful. And so I'm confident we might do it again someday, and that will be okay. But yeah, it's really great to have him by my side, and he's been working for a year and a half now, and it's cool to just see how we're growing together as professionals now too.
Yeah, I'm not an evolutionary psychologist, but I do believe that human beings are hardwired to be together and be social. And there is something to having someone by your side and rooting for you. And it could be parents, it could be siblings, it could be a significant other. And when that happens, it's pretty awesome. So
I am a big proponent. My favorite class in college was the science of human connection. And it's something I definitely take with me always. I have that also neurobiological understanding of where that comes from and the evolutionary understanding of why it's important. And so I think that's also what I'm doing. I'm facilitating human connection. And I hope to bring back live events actually now that I'm graduated and I have some more time. I'm hoping to facilitate more of that human connection because, people can listen to podcasts, but it's not quite the same as being able to ask a question to a professional who is in a role that you hope to one day be in yourself. There's something really empowering about that.
Maya, seriously, if anybody could do it, you could do it for sure. I'm gonna kind of close out with this. You just graduated. What advice would you give, not to NYU students, but to psychology undergraduates around the country who are still kind of coming right out of the pandemic, maybe junior or senior psychology majors? If they happen to be listening to this or their faculty members are listening to this, actually, let's do it two ways. What advice would you give to faculty members to give to those juniors and seniors or for themselves? And what advice would you give to students? I'll give you the last words.
So to students, I would say it's all about people. So find a professor or 2 or 3. Doesn't matter. Or actually, you know what? It doesn't have to be a professor. It could be anyone who is a little bit more senior than you and who has more experience than you, who you find in some way inspiring. Email them. Just email them. Ask them to sit down and talk to you. If it's just for 15 minutes, it'll be worth it. I promise. Cultivate relationships with mentors, please. It is so important. It's the reason I feel like I graduated college as a successful student. I had mentors who were there for me, but I also did the work to cultivate those relationships and help them blossom in the best way possible. And part of that is also being willing to be a little vulnerable with them. And it might seem scary, but yeah, that's that. So just email them. I can't believe I was scared to send a text to a professor who literally gave me his phone number and said, reach out to me if you have questions. And it took me 9 months to send him a text. And then he was a speaker on Psych Mike a year later, but it took me a long time. Don't hesitate. Just do it. To faculty members, I don't know if this is advice. It's a hope of mine. And it's something that I wish I maybe got more of, which is encouragement from them to meet with them outside. It's the same advice for students, but the reverse, which is help students feel comfortable reaching out to you and leaning on you as a resource. A question that I got time and time and time again from my audience members is, how do I reach out to mentors? I'm scared. I'm scared to talk to professors, even though I know deep down a lot of these professors have a desire to be there for students. But I would say, and I know it's difficult, and I know you have a lot on your plate and you've got so many things to juggle. But if you're a teacher, it means so much, so much to hear you say, I am here for questions, whatever it is, whether it's the class material or your life. I'm here for you as a person. That was the most, when I got that from teachers, it was just so, I got chills because it's like, I can't find that so often, but it's really wonderful. And it can change a student's life.
Thank you, Maya. I really appreciate your time today. Words of wisdom, as always.
Oh, Eric, I just want to say that you have a really special ability to find the goldness, the gold nuggets in people and make them aware of it and lift them up. And you probably already know how powerful that is, and how many ripple effects it has. But it's just such a wonderful quality. And it's something that I want to emulate too.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. And thanks for your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. I had a wonderful time.